That was me, standing there in my kitchen, microwaving leftover lasagna, or at least, trying to. Except the hum never came. The light inside the microwave didn't flicker on, and I stood there. My house had gone silent in that heavy, summer in Arizona way, still as a tomb, and twice as hot. I walked through the place flicking every switch like some idiot in denial, just hoping for a miracle, but all I got was blank stares from the digital clocks, little LED numbers blinking off into the void. My first thought, well, maybe the whole block lost power. Happens in July, when the grid gives up after a week of triple-digit days. I stepped out, blinking into that gold 5 p.m. haze, and that's when it hit me. Everybody else's house was just fine. Porch lights twinkling. Thing was Sandra Milner, queen of Cotton Ridge Estates, HOA president, sipping her iced tea 2 driveways over, watching me, not even pretending to look away. That was the moment I realized this wasn't an accident. This was a message. And for the first time in a long time, I actually felt a little afraid of just how far the HOA would go. See, a week earlier, I got this letter, big, official, HOA letterhead and all, telling me my backup generator in the garage was unauthorized equipment. I'd installed that thing last summer, after a brownout nearly cooked Max, my golden retriever, and nearly spoiled all my food. I'd followed the rules, sent in forms, kept it up to code. But apparently, aesthetics meant more to Sandra's crew than actual survival. Then the threat started. Coming. Remove it, or face sanctions. I figured sanctions meant a fine, maybe a letter stuck to the door. Never in a million years did I think it meant they'd have the utility company come out and lock my meter, bright orange tag zip-tied for everyone to see. That's when I started shaking, rage, and a little bit of disbelief, and called the power company. Hours later, a customer service rep calmly explained, "Yes, sir, the HOA requested your service be disconnected. They're assuming liability, sir. It's in your HOA agreement, sir." You can practically hear the smirk through the phone. It was 105 degrees outside. The walls of my house started sweating. Max started panting. And somewhere across the cul-de-sac, Mrs. Winslow, who was in her 80s and needed her medical bed, plugged in, probably didn't even know what was coming. That's the part that stuck with me. How a group of people could just decide who gets to keep the lights on and who doesn't. So, I did the only thing I could. I opened the garage, yanked the cord on my old generator, and started plugging in extension cords. Survival mode, right? You do what you have to, even if it makes you the neighborhood villain. And then, in the dark, I started remembering. Years ago, before the HOA existed, before Sandra's iron-fisted rule, I was a civil infrastructure consultant. I helped plan subdivisions, routes for stormwater, backup utility lines, the boring stuff no one talks about at cookouts. I'd worked on this very neighborhood back when it was just dirt, survey flags, and a developer with big dreams. Back then, I knew every inch of Cotton Ridge, every easement, every line on every plat map. I knew, for instance, about a certain backup water feed, city didn't. A dangerous little idea started growing. I pulled out my old files, Cotton Ridge infrastructure, Phase 1, diagrams with blue lines and faded stamps. And sure enough, that backup water feed was Arizona. That night, I sat in the dark, generator humming out in the garage, and started plotting, not revenge, just balance. If they wanted to play games with utilities, maybe it was time to remind them how fragile their little kingdom actually was. I couldn't sleep. Too hot. Too angry. And underneath it all, too aware that the HOA had pushed me out, made me the only person in this neighborhood, with both the memory and the means to fix or break the system everyone else took for granted. Days passed. The heat deepened. The HOA doubled down. Another letter, hand-delivered by a kid on a scooter, no less. Final warning, fines, board hearing. I laughed out loud. They didn't know how close their green lawns were to drying up. I spent my afternoons out back, inspecting that steel service plate behind the eucalyptus. Nobody ever noticed it, hidden behind overgrown grass. But I knew what was underneath. I drove 2 counties over to find Tom, my old supervisor, the guy who trained me in utilities work. He ran a bait shop now. He handed over the master valve key with a grin. "Sometimes the earth needs to remind people who's in charge," he said. I tucked that wrench under the shed. Generator logs, even videos showing the backup water valve was still active. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. One morning, I found a new notice taped to the HOA bulletin board, reminding. That afternoon, I checked the valve again. A faint bit of condensation on the steel casing told me water was flowing somewhere. Maybe a system test, maybe a flush. But it meant the emergency line was still part of the city's backup plan. And that meant, by legal easement, I had rights. I read the clause out loud. Property owner retains authority to access, monitor, and intervene on utility, lush lawns, and compliance. Sandra bragged about our superior irrigation at meetings, never realizing it all depended on the system she didn't even know still existed, the one under my backyard. Suddenly needing the problem neighbor. Bruce Talbot, the vice chair, knocked on my door, clipboard sweating, trying to play nice. "We need your help," he said, voice wobbling. I set my terms. Written admission of their mistake, immediate restoration of my power, and Sandra herself, on my porch, face to face. They blinked. They balked. They tried to stall. I held firm. The next day, notarized, official. By sunset, my fridge hummed back to life. But I wasn't done. I handed their legal team my own contracts. No more fines, binding easement rights, non-interference for 5 years. City oversight on all future enforcement. They signed. Clive, their slick lawyer, tried to sneak in a non-disclosure, but I shut that down. Residents deserved the truth. Word got out. The ones who'd stayed quiet started coming by, some with thanks, some with questions about their own rights. For the first time since I moved in, I felt like this place actually belonged to its people, not to a petty group of rule enforcers. A month later, Sandra resigned. Her lawyer was gone, too. The board wasn't feared anymore. It was just watched. Lawns got a little wilder. Mailboxes got a little quirkier. Sidewalk chalk art came back. People started waving again. Carla sat with me one evening, wine in hand, grinning. "You've become a bit of a legend," she said. I just laughed. All I did was stand up, remind them they didn't own what I paid for. That's how things finally changed, quietly, then all at once. The HOA sent me a letter asking me to join their new around. Now, the rains come back, slow and soft, and I sit on my porch with Max, watching water roll off the eaves, free at last. That's the thing about freedom. It's quiet, it's hard-won. And if you're lucky, it's contagious. So tell me, after all that, what would you have done? Have you ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours, even when everyone told you to just give in? Your victories. And hey, if you've ever tangled with an HOA, or you just want to see justice served, hit subscribe, share your story, and let's remind folks everywhere. Real power comes from standing your ground.